In 1916, a fighter pilot hid his aircraft by painting it the color of cloud and diving out of the sun. In 2025, an engineer hides a fighter by wrapping its skin in a thin sheet of ionized gas that swallows radar waves before they can return. Between those two acts sits a century of a single quiet war. Not between nations, but between the machine that hunts and the machine that hides. Forget paint and plasma. One equation governs every rung of this ladder, and each climb upward buys less than the one before it. 7 levels of hiding a fighter jet, and an 8th that may end the climb. At level 1, the only sensor in the sky is the human eye. The only defense is to fool it. Over the trenches of the First World War, pilots painted the undersides of their biplanes pale and the tops in mottled browns and greens. Countershading. It flattens the shape an observer reads against the ground or the clouds. By 1943, fighters wore disruptive patterns meant to break their outline at a glance. The mathematics are brutal. A human resolves an aircraft only when its contrast against the background crosses a threshold, and only out to a few kilometers of clean line of sight. Paint lowers the contrast. It does nothing else. The Spitfire and the Messerschmitt both hid this way. The Doctrine assumed the eye would always be the judge. That assumption held for exactly as long as radar took to arrive. Radar did not care what color you were. At level 2, the problem inverts. Radar in the Second World War, the British chain home towers among the first, detected an aircraft by the energy it reflected. Paint changes nothing. The next move was not to hide the reflection, but to hide the position. Geometry became the weapon. Radar travels in straight lines, while the Earth curves. Every radar has a horizon, and that horizon grows only with the square root of altitude. Fly low enough, hug a valley floor, and you slip beneath the beam entirely. This is nap of the Earth penetration, or invert it. The SR-71 Blackbird climbed above 80,000 feet and ran past 3 times the speed of sound, fast enough that any missile arrived where the jet used to be. Both answers exploit geometry. Neither reduces the aircraft's radar return by a single decibel. They simply put the aircraft where the radar cannot look, until the radar networks grew dense enough to look almost everywhere. Hiding by position works only until the enemy fills the sky with eyes. At level 3, engineers finally attack the reflection itself. The insight came from a 1962 paper by the Soviet physicist Pyotr Ufimtsev. The West read it. Moscow ignored it. Radar obeys the same law as a mirror. The angle of reflection equals the angle of incidence. Build the aircraft from flat facets. Tilt each one so incoming energy bounces away from the emitter rather than back toward it, and the radar hears almost nothing. This is the F-117 Nighthawk. All angular black planes and no curves. It was the first aircraft shaped by the math of deflection. Here, the governing equation of the whole ladder appears. Detection range rises only with the 4th root of radar cross-section. Cut your signature by a factor of 10,000, and the range at which a radar finds you falls by a factor of only 10. That 4th root is the cruel arithmetic of stealth. Enormous engineering effort for shrinking returns. Every level above this one is a fight against that exponent. At level 4, deflection meets absorption. Faceting throws energy aside, but a flat plane still produces a bright flash when it faces a radar squarely. The next step is to drink the energy instead. Radar absorbent material, layered onto the B-2 Spirit and its descendants, is engineered so an incoming wave passes into the coating and dies. It is converted to heat by magnetic and dielectric losses before it can escape. The physics turns on skin depth and impedance. The surface matches the impedance of free space, so the wave enters rather than reflects. Then it suffocates inside. Carbonyl iron paints and engineered foams do the work. The true penalty was doctrinal. These coatings degrade when exposed to moisture and flight stress. This is why the B-2 spent its life in climate-controlled hangars and demanded many maintenance hours for every hour it flew. Absorption bought a quieter aircraft at the price of logistics. Stealth became a budget as much as a shape. At level 5, the disciplines fuse. The faceted F-117 was a creature of slow computers of the 1970s. Once processors could solve the diffraction equations across smooth surfaces, designers replaced facets with continuous curves that scatter even less. The F-22 Raptor and the F-35 add 3 tricks at once. Planform alignment sweeps every edge, wings, tails, doors, even the sawtooth seams between panels, to just a few parallel angles. The unavoidable returns collapse into a handful of narrow spikes pointed away from any likely threat. Weapons move inside the fuselage. A missile hanging from a pylon is a corner reflector that erases the shaping around it. Shaping, materials, and edge management are tuned together rather than in sequence. Open source estimates put the results somewhere near the radar signature of a small bird. The true figures stay classified. The Doctrine bends with the geometry. A stealth fighter is quiet only from the front, in a narrow cone, against the radar bands it was built for. Turn it or change the wavelength, and the magic fades. At level 6, the Hunter changes the wavelength. Every shaping trick so far assumes a radar wavelength far smaller than the aircraft. Low-frequency radars break that assumption. The old VHF sets working at wavelengths of 1 to 2 meters bypass modern geometric stealth. When a feature on the aircraft, a tail fin or a wingtip, is roughly the size of the wavelength, it resonates. It lights up regardless of its coding. This is why counter-stealth designers go tailless. The flying wing planform of the B-21 Raider removes every feature near the VHF resonance band. It smooths the aircraft into one broad shape with no fins to ring. The same level adds the infrared front. Exhaust is cooled and shielded. A heat-seeking sensor does not care about radar geometry. Stealth stops being a single number. It is a spectrum. Radar, infrared, visual, acoustic, each demanding its own answer. The aircraft that hides from one band shouts in another. Doctrine now demands hiding across all of them at once. No Air Force has achieved full-spectrum invisibility. The ones that try pay for every band twice. At level 7, the aircraft stops being passive. Every level below shapes or coats a fixed surface. The 7th tries to change the aircraft's electromagnetic behavior in real time. 3 lines of research converge here. The first is plasma stealth. Wrap the skin in a thin layer of ionized gas whose plasma frequency can be tuned to absorb or refract radar across a band of frequencies that fixed shaping cannot cover. The second is active cancellation. The aircraft samples the incoming radar pulse and emits an inverted copy of its own return. The 2 waves meet and cancel. The same destructive interference that powers noise-canceling headphones is applied to a wave moving at the speed of light. The third is metamaterials. Surfaces engineered with structures smaller than the wavelength that steer radar energy in ways ordinary matter cannot. Each is real in the laboratory and brutal in practice. Generating plasma costs power and throws off heat, which a thermal sensor reads at once. Canceling a pulse means predicting it within billionths of a second. The open question hanging over the whole ladder is whether the 7th level is a true rung or a wall. You cannot hide from radar by becoming a beacon in the infrared, which is what every major Air Force is now quietly chasing. The 8th level is not a better coating, but a thinking skin. Adaptive metasurfaces driven by onboard algorithms that reshape the aircraft's signature for each threat in the instant it appears. Against it stands the counter that may end the climb altogether. Quantum and multistatic radar networks built to see exactly the targets passive stealth was designed to erase. The latter has always been a race. The next rung may decide whether hiding survives at all. For 100 years, the math has favored the hunter by that stubborn 4th route, and every generation paid more to climb one step higher. The next video turns the latter around. The 7 levels of killing a fighter jet, from a pilot's naked eyes to an algorithm that fires before anyone sees it coming. Subscribe so you don't miss it.